Is also one of the countries in southern Africa worst affected by hunger. The World Food Programme says the southern African nation is still dealing with the effects of an ongoing drought and Cyclone Idai. Now, the coronavirus pandemic is compounding the problem. WFP's Zimbabwe spokesperson, Nevill, joins me via Skype. A very good afternoon to you, Claire. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Zimbabwe has been battling with food shortages for a number of years now, and the COVID-19 crisis has exacerbated matters. How many people are known to be food insecure?
Good afternoon there. Yes, right now about 7.7 million people in Zimbabwe are food insecure, which is almost half the population here in Zimbabwe. We know that the situation is getting worse. The number of severely food insecure people has risen from 3.8 million to 4.3 million at the end of last year. So right now, Zimbabweans are in a really critical stage. They were already facing severe food insecurity because of onset drought, the effects of climate change, and hampered by the devastating economic situation here in the country. And now the COVID-19 pandemic currently spreading through the country is adding an extra layer for millions of Zimbabweans right now.
Okay, let's talk about those people who are able to feed themselves. Are you able to say if the food that is there meets the nutritional values needed, especially when we're talking about children, as we have been in the show earlier on?
Well, the programme delivers food assistance to the most vulnerable people in the country. So we focus our operation on, right now, the almost 4 million who are struggling to feed themselves. So those who are able to meet their food needs, we are less focused on them, and we're focusing on the most vulnerable right now. So we know that so many families are overstretched, and they are often having to perhaps skip meals, resort to negative coping mechanisms like having to sell off their precious livelihood assets, which they've been relying on during this lean season. Right now in Zimbabwe, we're at the time when millions of families should be harvesting food from their gardens. We're coming to the end of the typical lean season, but that isn't the case right now. We haven't had the rains in the country that we need. So we know that for the majority of the population, it's either a very poor harvest or a failed harvest altogether. And that means that ultimately people aren't able to meet their daily food needs and are resorting to, like I say, selling off assets, borrowing from perhaps neighbours, or having to go without 3 meals a day.
So how much worse has the situation become because of the lockdown restrictions, and what impact, if any, is that having on you rolling out your programs? So what are the current challenges that you're facing?
Well, right now, we know that it's going way beyond the rural areas. There were 2.2 million people in urban areas in Zimbabwe who were food insecure, and because of the situation of the lockdown and about 80% of people living in urban areas are relying on casual labour in order to survive, and the informal sector. And because of the lockdown due to the pandemic, they're just unable to go out and make a living. So our analysis is showing that the 2.2 million is going to increase to around 3.3 million because of the pandemic. So the World Food Programme is scaling up our response in urban areas through delivering food assistance through cash transfers in these areas. So we're adapting our operations to the situation as it unfolds. And for example, our food distributions in rural areas as well, we are ensuring that all of the health and safety measures are in place and that social distancing is being adhered to. And there are very strict measures in place to ensure the safety and security of all of our beneficiaries, our staff and our partners. The main challenge right now, we've had a lot of generous support from our donors to be able to continue with our operations, because they really have to continue right now in this situation where we're facing climate change, the economic instability, and now COVID-19. Our donors have responded, but we really need these contributions on time to be able to get the food into the country to deliver to beneficiaries on time. So right now, the World Food Programme here in Zimbabwe, we're facing a shortfall of $110 million that we really need to continue operations. In addition to a $19.5 million that we need to cover our COVID response alone. So that's our logistical response and being able to get all of the health and safety measures in place that we need to respond.
So UN Zimbabwe has appealed for $85 million of emergency COVID funding. How much does the World Food Programme need to sufficiently carry out its mandate during the crisis?
Well, yeah, as I say, we're continuing beyond the lean season right now because the harvest hasn't been productive. So our operation must continue, and in addition, we need this $19.5 million to cover our COVID response on top of our ordinary operations. And it's critical that we get this funding without further delay, because millions of Zimbabweans are in a very precarious situation right now. So we really need the contributions on time. So that's the 110 million plus the 19.5 million for the COVID response.
Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. That was Nevill. She's a spokesperson for the World Food Programme in Zimbabwe.